Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. This is a video episode, so make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I will put the link to this episode in the show notes. So, today I want to dive right into the topic. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of protecting your commitment. Over the course, really this year, we have been talking a lot about identifying the things that get you off track of God's plan, identifying the things that separate you from God, and really just keeping your flesh in check so that you can stay committed to what God has you to do in both your life and your business. So for me, over the last couple of weeks, life smacked me in the face, and my emotions about it began to create a wedge between me and God. And I want to talk about this because this is real life. We get hurt, things happen, people might pass away, you experience losses, you may go through divorce, you may lose a job, like tragedy happens. And tragedy and our emotions behind the tragedy are a very effective way for the enemy to drive a wedge between you and God. And it oftentimes catapults a lot of us into performance to where we're doing all the things to make it look like we are on track and on pace with God, but emotionally we're disconnected, and that intimacy with God is just not there. And that's a very dangerous place to be in. And if we're not cognizant of it, it could cause a lot more harm than good. And this podcast has always been about true relationship with God, not religion, not the mask that you're taught in church of what you need to do to look as if you're Christ-like. But I'm talking about true relationship with God, true transformation, true commitment to Him and the things that He has for you to do, to Him and His word, true righteousness, all of that. And not just deed, but in your heart posture and your commitment that people don't see. And what's interesting is that during this time period over the last couple of weeks, so for me, without going into too much detail, I prefer to process pain privately. But whenever a lesson comes up that's relevant that I believe other people can connect to, that's when I choose to bring it to the podcast or my YouTube channel and things like that. But the details of my situation aren't really necessary. And I believe that in this social media influencer age, people feel like they need to have a full pass access to your life. Or if you're sharing trauma, that means you're real and relatable. And if your life is organized, that means that it's fake. And I don't think that that's true. And I want this platform has always been not necessarily about me, but for me, just being a mouthpiece to what you may be feeling and helping you navigate that so that you can stay connected to God and grow in both your faith and your business. So for me, life happened, right? I was very hurt and heartbroken by the situation that I found myself in. And I noticed that my feelings began to draw a wedge between me and God. And a lot of the things that have worked for me in previous situations weren't working anymore because I found myself not only being hurt, but angry with God. And I had a lot of feelings. And as I was recalling scripture and speaking life over myself and all of that, it was actually having the opposite effect. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where life happens and you apply your faith to it. And as you're applying your faith to it and trying to use the tools that you know, it seems to get worse as far as how you feel about it. But that's where I was. I'm like, well, I'm speaking these scriptures over myself about God being a healer and a miracle worker and all of these things. And I'm like, you know what? God, I know you're all these things. I know that you're all powerful. I know that you're sovereign. I know that you're a way maker, a miracle worker, a promise keeper. I know that you are all these things. But what I'm not understanding and where my frustration is, and this was me being honest with God because I believe in being vulnerable. So I'm like, God, knowing that you were all these things, why did you let this happen to me? Why were these things that you are not applied to my situation? That's how I felt. And I'm going to be real about it because that's a very real reaction to it. And so those feelings began to really just further make that wedge go deeper. And I was talking to my husband about it, because I'm always very candid with him about what I feel. And I really appreciate my husband because he's really graced, like God created him for me, because the way he handles me when I'm in an emotional state is with a lot of wisdom, a lot of care, and a lot of subtlety. Like he gives me the space to be honest about how I feel without pushing anything on me. He'll just plant little seeds. And it's funny because usually in the moment he's not pushy about it at all, so he'll say his piece and then leave it at that. And I'll probably dismiss it usually in the moment, and then later be like, I see, God, I see how you used him in that moment. And so as I was explaining these same feelings to him, he was like, but do you see the enemy here? And I was like, no, I don't see the enemy. How did, like, forget the enemy. God, we already have victory over the enemy. I'm mad at God. Like that's how I felt. Very angry and emotional. And so, but that was a seed that God used my husband to plant. A couple days later after that, I was watching a movie. My grandmother was over. So I'll be finding anything that's faith-based to just turn on the TV to keep her entertained. Either Steve Harvey, Tyler Perry, or anything else faith-based, she good. So I cut on this movie called The Shack. And I didn't sit to watch the whole thing because I had errands to run, but a particular part that I saw, the guy in the shack was going through all of this tragedy. His daughter died. He had a terrible upbringing. He actually like murdered his father when he was a kid. I probably will sit down and watch it in its entirety, but I didn't have time at that moment. But the part that I did see, the guy ends up in a shack with these characters that are supposed to be representative of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And so as he was talking to God, who's played by Octavia Spencer, she has says he was basically verbalizing a lot of the anger that I was feeling. And Octavia Spencer's character responded and was like, if you didn't see me in that, in all of this tragedy, is because you were choosing not to, but I was there in all of that. And I've been walking with God long enough to know when he's talking to me. And so I chuckled a little bit when that part came on. I said, okay, God, I hear you. I know that you're here, but my emotions won't let me see you. And I left it at that. A couple days later, at this point, it's been about a week and a half since my situation that had me upset. And I had tried to, do all of the things that I know to do to heal. I prayed, I fasted, and I woke up early and opened my Bible to spend time with God. But my emotion and my heartbreak and my pain, it it wouldn't, it was a blockage there. Like I can't really explain it, but I wasn't able to really connect with God because of my feelings being hurt. And so with that, I went back into my default state, which is to work. I can easily work. I enjoy working. I'm naturally good at it. My business is something that's exciting to me. My clients I love. And so I went into work mode and I was getting things done. I closed a couple of deals in the midst of my frustration. I just went into default mode. So then a couple other days, but at the same time, it's still in the back of my head where I was like, I have to figure this out. I just don't know what to do. And I thank God for just wise counsel and people in my life who pray for me, and who will let me know, like, hey, I'm praying for you. And people, who knew what was going on would ask, like, do you need anything? I'm like, just pray for me. I don't need anything. I'm blessed. I don't need anything. I have no need in my life, right? But the biggest need I have right now is that I'm angry and hurt and upset with God, and that's affecting my intimacy with him. And I can't have this. And so I was in this state to where I was mad at God. I was hurt about my situation, but I was also upset that I was mad at God and hurt about my situation. And it just left me in this just sucky predicament. And I wanted to just bring some language to those emotions because I know that a lot of you guys may find yourself in that moment where life happens. Like I said, someone may pass away. You may be facing a certain tragedy. COVID is something that has hit the whole world. So maybe COVID has caused tragedy within your family, and you find yourself with these same emotions. And I want to provide language to it to let you to validate your feelings, for one, and also to let you know that there is a way out of that funk. So my way out came this past Monday. It had been about 2 weeks of me feeling like this, and really the trigger was I saw myself, and this is why self-awareness is very important. I saw myself in my default setting of going into work mode, getting things done, grinding. I got goals, I'm trying to do XYZ. And I was starting to like plan and work towards some new things in business. And that's when I really had to put my foot down with myself and say, Tatum, you will not go into your default setting, because that's going to put you in a very dangerous state because of what you do. I believe that you do business God's way. And I cannot come on this microphone and especially come on this microphone. And I'm grateful for this podcast because not only does it provide me an opportunity to communicate to you guys the messages that God gives and help you with your life, but it keeps me accountable because I refuse to open my mouth on this platform and just be talking. And so I was the last couple of weeks, we had the interview that I had pre-recorded that was airing. So I wasn't recording the podcast. And so as I started to recognize myself go into default mode and I knew I needed to record, I'm like, no, you can't do this. You do business God's way. You can't build your business without God. You can't go about creating things. That's how people get off. That's how pride gets in. That's how people start out with God, but then they fall off because of whatever situation. But in this situation, it could be me because I'm mad at God or have feelings that's transpired. Now I'm building this business and I build it to be great, but God ain't in it no more. That won't be me. Because when it's all said and done and I get to them gates, I'm getting my well done. Period. I'm getting my well done. I'm not going to be out here mismanaging what God has blessed me with. So I needed to get myself together and put my foot down with me. And so Monday came around, and that's where I was at. Like, we're not doing another week of this, Tatum. Get it together. So I closed. I didn't work on Monday at all. I took a drive. I just wanted to change my scenery. The DC weather been like ridiculous. Some days it's cold, some days it's warm. So at this day was pretty decent, but I didn't want to go for a walk because I wanted to write. So I went for a drive, drove about 30 minutes outside of where I live, parked, actually drove to the building that we're buying. And so I was like, let me just go out here, park. I could pray over the building and also like figure out my life. And I had my Bible with me, and I pulled up in the parking lot and I was listening to Dappy Keys, which is a musician. He does like prophetic instrumentals and he plays the piano primarily. So the whole way I'm driving, I'm listening to Dappy Keys, and I start listening to like this Marvin Sapp song called Thirst. And I don't even know how I came across this song. Again, while I was mad at God, he was planting seeds. I came across this song Thirst, I think on like social media, but the words really spoke to where I was at. It's actually called Thirsty by Marvin Sapp. And the lyrics go, my soul is thirsty. My soul is thirsty for you. As the deer is thirsty for the water, so does my soul long for thee. My spirit needs a refreshing. Father, I'm thirsty. And that really spoke to where I was at. It's like, God, I want to be connected with you. I don't want to be distant from you. I don't want to be mad at you. I don't want to be heartbroken. I know you're with me. I know that you're good. I know that all things, including this, is going to work out for my good. I know what you've done for me before. I got your track record, but I am in my feelings. Okay, no Drake. I'm in my feelings, God. But I want you, but because I'm so emotional about this situation, I feel like I need a refresh. And so I played that song over and over and over. I played another song that I love. It's called Worth by Anthony J. Brown. And that song always, that's one of the first songs that broke me down when I started listening to gospel music, because the song just talks about, you thought I was worth saving. So you came and changed my life. You thought I was worth keeping. So you cleaned me up inside. You thought I was to die for. And even right now, as I'm recording this, it's Good Friday. Easter, Resurrection Sunday is on Sunday. And so I was not finna go in the Holy Week mad at God. Come on now. And so I played this music to just remind myself and really just get my flesh in check. Essentially, that's what it was, is my flesh was hurt. My emotions, my feelings were hurt. So I had to get them out the way because they were driving a wedge between me and God. So as I pulled up to the building, I was listening to these songs the whole way there. I parked and I just cried. I bawled my eyes out. And then what my husband said to me came back up and he said, "Do you see the enemy in this?" It was just a simple sentence. And so in that moment, I finally was able to see, right? Because remember, the character in the movie said that if you're not seeing me, it's because you're choosing not to. You're focusing on the pain and not my presence. And that was ringing in my head like, Tatum, you're focusing on the pain and not his presence. And that's what's causing this disconnect. And then my husband's voice is in my head like, do you not see the enemy in this? And so as I was weeping in the car, I said, God, I had to repent. I said, God, forgive me, because the enemy was causing my pain to distort my presence, to distort my ability to see your presence in this. As I sat in that car, I cried, I repented, and as that happened, I started to feel lighter. I started to speak out of my mouth the promises of God. So just everything I tried to do before, it wasn't working because I was too focused on my pain and it was causing my heart to try to harden. And so in this moment, I just released it all out, started reclaiming and speaking over what God has promised me, just started speaking into who I know He is, started reiterating things that He shared with me, and just getting back with His program. Because as I was hurt, my pain wanted me to feel like, okay, well, forget about that. I'm just going to focus on business. So I'm going to neglect this area of my life and I'm just going to settle. No. I'm uncompromising because God didn't create me to compromise, and I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to settle at all. And it's not with the God I serve. I wasn't built to settle. I was built to reign. I was built to be royalty. And so, and because of Him, not because of me. And so, as I sat there, y'all, I can't even tell you how that cry was a good one. One of them good ones where you could take a nap afterwards. It was one of them good ones. And just, I cried, I repented, I went to war, with my prayers against the enemy and him distorting my vision and making me see my pain as bigger than God's presence in my situation and bigger than God's promises for my life. And that changed everything, to where I'm able to get on this microphone right now. I went back to my business and was able to continue to, show up there and be what my clients need from me, and then, continue to build and grow and do it with God, because I feel like I said, I refuse to do it without Him. And so I'm sharing this with you because, one, you have to refuse to go through your life without God, and not the mask, not playing religion, but you have to refuse and be uncompromising about doing life without God. That's the first thing. And in addition to that, you have to be able to identify what is causing the rift between you and God. What is it? Because He's always near. He's always there. So anytime we feel distance is because we're choosing to focus on the pain or the situation or whatever it is we have going on, as opposed to choosing to find him. I want it to ring in your head. I want when those emotions and that sadness come up, those questions of God, why? God, how could you let this happen? I want you to know, don't let your pain overshadow his presence, and understand that your emotions are being used by the enemy. They are valid. Your emotions are valid, but they're also being used by the enemy to make you distant from God. The enemy's job is to kill, steal, and destroy, and he don't care how he's going to do it in order to get that mission accomplished. So for any of you guys, if you've identified with any emotion, any language, because I want to provide language to how you feel so that I can effectively provide you solutions. And so for any of you guys that are listening and you found yourself identifying with the situation and the emotions I described, I'm going to ask you what my husband asked me. Do you see the enemy? And I feel like if you can identify how the enemy is manipulating you using your emotions, you can use the tools and the authority that you have to remind him to get under your feet, to speak life over yourself, to cancel any plans of him or his workers in Jesus' name. Remember, God is always present, and don't let your pain blind you from seeing him. He is the way, the truth, the light. He's the answer. He thought you were to die for. Again, this is Good Friday. He prepaid for your sin by sending Jesus to die on the cross. So just remind yourself of God's love. Remind your flesh and your emotions that God's strength is perfected in your weakness. Remind your flesh and your emotions that nothing is a surprise to God, that he is still God, no matter what hand life is dealing you at this moment. I want you to see him, and don't let your pain rob you from seeing and feeling his presence. And don't let your pain rob you from your power that you have as a man or as a woman of God. So that's it for this week, y'all. Thank you for listening. I love you guys. Make sure you subscribe, rate the show, follow me on Instagram at Tatum Temia, follow Blessed and Bossed Up on Instagram, subscribe to YouTube if I didn't say that already. And I will talk to you guys next week.